Now for Raising the Bar, Greater RVA's premier law talk radio show. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
Good morning and welcome to Raising the Bar, Greater RVA's Law Talk Radio Show. This is attorney Colleen Quinn with Locke and Quinn, and today we're going to talk about surviving a contested adoption. And with me, I have my clients, Tiffany and Dustin Griffith. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And this is going to be a great show. And for anybody that has ever confronted any sort of contested litigation, even if it's custody, divorce, support, what Tiffany and Dustin went through for an extended period of time will be applicable to anybody that has to hire a lawyer and go through the court system and just go through the financially and emotionally draining prospect of that process. And remember that all of the videos of the Raising the Bar Law Talk Radio Show are shown live as we do them on the Locke and Quinn Facebook page. So you can watch us live right now. You can also capture the video on the Locke and Quinn Facebook page later. It's saved there. Also, all of the podcasts are being loaded to the Raising the Bar Law Talk podcast channel on iTunes. And you can also capture the videos and podcasts on the Raising the Bar Law Talk website. Remember, too, that our website has a listing of all of the free and pro bono services that are available, including to specialty groups like veterans and folks with disabilities and all of the like. So it's a really good resource page. But let's get on to today's topic, which is surviving a contested adoption. And Tiffany, why don't you tell us how and why did you and Dustin originally look to adoption to grow your family?
Sure. We always knew we wanted to adopt. And when we figured we'd have children biologically first, and when that didn't work out and we had some losses, we started to research attorneys and came across you.
Lucky you.
Yes, we were looking for the best, and we did. We found it. And we actually met with you for a short period of time and did the retainer where we were able to receive your emails about prospective children that could be adopted. And that's kind of how it came about.
Okay. And then at some point, you, through various connections, and I want you to tell me about that, got a lead on a particular baby that might be available.
Yeah. So our community, one thing that you had told us to do was to let everybody know that you want to adopt. So we did. So our community knew that. The story's a bit convoluted in the fact that my good friend's brother is a pastor in our community.
Right.
And our adopted daughter's biological maternal grandmother, her friend knew that pastor and knew of the mother being incarcerated and the potential of the baby going into foster care and the potential for adoption. So she went and spoke to him. He contacted us, and then he contacted the birth father, and then put us together, and that's how it came about.
Yeah, and so many adoptions are happening through that type of diagrammed networking. Yes. You know, this person knows that person, et cetera. Yes. And also, traditionally, pastors and ministers were the original matchmakers for a lot of adoptions. Yeah,
so it makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense that came about. So, Dustin, how did you feel about this lead?
I mean, it was very surprising to have a preacher come and, tell us about this little baby girl that's going to be born.
Mm-hmm.
And then within 24 hours later, our pastor came and told us about the same little girl.
Okay.
So it's kind of like fate.
Right. But you all are out in the Powhatan community, so it's a little tight community out
there. It's a
Yes.
big county, but a small town feel. Yes.
Exactly. So when that lead came about, what happened next? So how did Aviana actually end up getting picked up by you?
The birth father had to go and get custody of her because the birth mother was incarcerated and had her while incarcerated. So he had to actually get her from Fluvanna DSS he brought her home, and then in a Lowe's parking lot, we met in a Lowe's parking lot, he gave her to us. And then a day or two before that, I had contacted you. So we already had some stuff rolling to get him to sign the agreement for the consent for adoption. And we weren't sure where the birth mother's position was going to be, whether she was going to contest, not contest. So we got that moving right away. Had Jewish Family Services go out and meet with the mother in prison and
try to find out what her thoughts
stance
were.
was.
Right.
Yes.
So a lot of people don't realize that, the birth father has just the same rights as the birth mother in an adoption to place a child.
Correct.
And in this case, we can use Jason's name because your case went all the way up to Court of Appeals. There's a public published opinion and everything.
Yes.
But in this case, Jason was already raising 3 other boys, right?
Correct.
And just to bring in a baby girl at that point was really too much for him.
And because the mother had been in and out of jail so frequently, there were a lot of behavioral issues happening in the home with the young children. So he just financially, emotionally capable of handling another child.
Yeah. And a lot of people, it's, to me, having done adoption work for 30 years, to me, it's so admirable when a parent can recognize that they just are not in a position to parent. And maybe there's a better setup out there that's going to be in the best interest of that child. And you really have to admire Jason for realizing that and saying, I've got to focus on the 3 children that are at home.
Absolutely. He made, when he handed her to us, I literally felt like he just fell apart into a million pieces. You could see how hard that decision was, but he frequently says, that's what you do as a parent. You have to make the hard decisions. You have to do what's right. And he knew that was what was right for her.
It's really, when you look at love, that's like the greatest love, to actually to place a child really elsewhere, because you know that you can give them a better life.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
So then basically tell us what happened when we found out that birth mom was not quite so on board. And I think we had talked about pursuing, folks can do a consensual adoption now with an ongoing contact agreement, which is a really great way of doing an adoption, but that didn't seem to be the case, did it?
No, she didn't want to have anything to do with it, but she had no means of taking care of her. She was going to be incarcerated for, another almost 2 years from the time that she was placed with us at 11 days old. And she had no family that could step up to the plate and help her raise Aviana. So literally there was nowhere for her to go but foster care unless there was this placement. And there was no real contact with her. We allowed there to be contact, but she didn't contact us. We spoke twice throughout the whole entire process over the phone.
Yeah, and it's really hard with incarcerated parents too to coordinate any sort of contact. I mean, you can mail things to and from the prison, but in terms of calls and whatnot, you have to be there. You have to take a collect call. It's very difficult to coordinate those
and
things.
Some of those things were shocking to me. I would frequently email you and say, do I need it? Do I take this call? What do I do? I'm scared. I don't know what to do. How do I handle this? So we did. The few calls that we took, it was quote unquote on our dime. We accepted the collect call, talked to her, and yes.
Yeah. So tell me, Dustin, because you were the working man at home that had to pony up the bucks. Yeah. Were you surprised when I told you that a person incarcerated in Virginia is entitled in an adoption proceeding, and there are other proceedings too, but in an adoption proceeding where the parental rights are potentially being terminated, is entitled to a free attorney?
Yeah, it was very surprising. She didn't have to come up with anything out of her pocket or anything. She had a free lawyer, and here it is. I had to go out work every day, and I had to pay for my attorneys.
Right.
So it was very surprising.
And I wasn't cheap, was I?
But worth every penny.
But we got the best.
Yeah, you got
we did get the best.
Thank you. So I did try to warn you ahead of time that it could be a long haul.
Yes.
And it could get expensive.
Yes.
And that's so. So when you look at how long the process total from beginning and picking up Aviana to finally hearing that the Court of Appeals decision was not going to be appealed. How long was that?
2 years, 3 months.
Wow, I knew you would know these. I knew you would have it down to
I
like
do.
a minute.
I do. Yes.
And just so that folks can appreciate it, I mean, how expensive was that process? Because you not only ended up paying my fees, but you paid the birth father's attorney fees. So all in, Dustin, you probably have calculated the numbers. Do you have some idea?
Well, it's a little over $130,000.
Wow. Wow.
But it was worth every dime.
And that included,
Now you can say that now that it's over.
yeah.
Yes.
But that also included, we hired you, and then we hired the birth father's attorney, and we hired a private investigator per year recommendation. We hired the attachment specialist, and that also included the fees with our home study.
Right.
So that was the total package.
All in.
Yes.
All
yeah.
in. And the guardian ad litem for the baby, I think got picked up by the state.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because sometimes that can get assessed.
Yeah, we
that
didn't
would
get
have
that one, thank God.
That would have been a real blow, right?
Yeah.
Another bill. So let's talk a little bit about how you finance that, because at some point I think you had looked into starting a fund.
So my sister started a GoFundMe when we finally got through the circuit court, when we knew we were looking at the Court of Appeals. And that only amounted to about $3,000 and some dollars. The rest of it we had in savings. And we really just believe that through the grace of God, Dustin just kept getting the jobs that we would get a bill from you or from the other attorney, and miraculously he would get a job that would pay that. So
Wow.
It just happened. We were very blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dustin, can you tell the listeners what kind of work you do?
I'm a Class A licensed contractor, so I'm a general contractor. I build homes, additions, decks, pretty much anything you need, I can take care of it.
Yeah, and fortunately, people were turning to you for that work.
Yes, they were.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
very
really
fortunate.
good.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the birth mom in your case was incarcerated, and she gets a free attorney while she's also got free room and lodging and all of that good stuff. So the first phase, and most people in Virginia don't realize that you have to go, that you go through a juvenile court process in a parental placement adoption, and to address the birth parent rights. And then if that phase gets appealed to circuit court, then the contesting birth parent gets a new trial all over, brand new. We call it de novo, and you have to go through it again. And so that's one of the reasons why things get so expensive, is essentially you go through round one, and then that gets kind of just wiped out, and then you go through round two,
Correct.
So let's talk about that process, first of all, in the juvenile court and your experience there.
That one was actually, I think for me, a little bit more shocking. It was the first time that I actually physically saw the birth mother. And we were very blessed. We had almost our entire church community, all of our friends and family that showed up the day of court and were there to support us.
And in pink shirts.
And in pink.
Yeah.
And support. Yes, everybody wore pink. And people who
Or
couldn't
pink
be
ties
there
or whatever
were,
they had that was pink.
Yes, they were putting pink posts on Facebook saying, we're not there, but we're supporting you.
And which church group which church?
We go to St. John Newman in Powhatan. And I mean, our pastor was there and so many people. So from that standpoint was overwhelming, and the love and support that we had for people saying, we know she should be with you. And that court wasn't as long as the circuit court, but it was nerve-wracking. I think that you just don't know, and those what ifs can eat at you. And that was hard to worry about. Well, what would happen?
Right. The other thing about the juvenile court is that it was the proceeding was private.
Correct.
So even though all those people came from your church, et cetera, they couldn't watch what was happening, because we ended up going back in judges' chambers, and then only the two of you, and of course the birth father and his attorney, the guardian ad litem, which is the attorney appointed for the baby, the incarcerated birth mother, and her prison guards.
Right.
Remember?
Yep. They were there.
Yeah, they were there, and then her attorney, and because we were all pretty crowded in that.
It was a tiny little space.
And how was that? Because clearly the two of you are extremely compassionate folks, and here you, for the first time, you're seeing the birth mom, and there's a part that tugs at your heartstrings because, you know, it is her child, but she's also incarcerated due to a lot of her own actions.
It's hard. It's I think it was harder for me than my husband, and probably just being a female and knowing the emotions and having had lost children, I knew that what that pain felt like. So when one of the things that we took into consideration is when we won, I did not leave and go out until her guards escorted her out, because I knew that all the people that were there would cheer for us. So just having some dignity and respect for the fact that this person is losing a child, even though it might be exactly what's needed in the best interest of the child, you have to have that respect for that person to understand that they're going through something too.
Yeah. And then I think through the process, you also made an effort to share pictures of Aviana so that she could see that she was doing well, satisfy that curiosity.
Yeah, I wrote her several times with pictures, pictures of her baptism, pictures of just her with family, one of her first baths, just things like that, so she could see that and know that, because we were open to the open at first, the open contact agreement. So letting her know we don't want to fight. We don't have to fight. We don't want to do this. But it didn't work out that way. But yeah.
Well, and the reality is that, you know, we proceeded under, without getting too legalese, but you guys know all this, under 63.21205 of the adoption statutes, which is the best interest analysis. And basically there are 8 factors there that the courts has to look at, including the age of the child, the relationship of the contesting birth mom with the other children. And that was a factor in this case. That looks at your home, looks at attachment issues, looks at all of those different factors. And so there's a lot of evidence that has to come in. So one of the things was basically the fact that she had put herself into a position. One of the factors is you have to be willing and able to immediately take the child.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's the issue with a lot of these incarcerated birth parents is that, yes, they have parental rights, but when you're looking at that factor under the adoption statutes, being willing and able to take the child is not there.
Correct. In fact, the judge in the circuit court said that the mother, in fact, sabotaged her own efforts to be able to parent.
Right. Right. Which is Judge Sella, and
Correct.
That was a quote that got picked up in the Court of Appeals opinion too. Yeah. So basically, the concept is that you've put yourself in that position of taking yourself out of the ability to parent. You know, you took yourself out of that role. So yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the attachment evaluation, because that's something probably a lot of folks aren't familiar with, but they actually, you know, it's not that different from in custody cases when folks have like a custody evaluation, et cetera. So talk a little bit about that process.
The first time for me was super scary because I didn't know what to expect. And you're in a room that has mirrors where they're videotaping you and watching your interactions with the child. So I was nervous the first time, and that came through, the fact that I was nervous. And then the second time when we had to go back, we hired him twice, essentially, because when we went back to circuit, we hired him again to do a reevaluation. I think that how he observed us and how he correlated the attachment that we have and that Aviana has with us was pivotal in our case, was stating the fact that this would be detrimental to her if she had to leave this home.
Right.
It was very important for our case, and I think bared a lot of weight.
Well, and even though those 8 factors don't say you have to show that the continued relationship with the birth parent would be detrimental to the child, there's some case law. So really kind of showing that piece and showing that she's so attached to you that to move her would be detrimental to her was a big factor.
Yeah.
So Dustin, how did you feel about that one-way mirror thing where you knew somebody was watching you interact with your daughter?
Well, it was very different. It was very different. And then how we had to leave her in the room and see how she acted without us being there and see if she really wanted us to come back. And, she noticed that we were gone. And then when she started crying, I was like, hey, I got to get in there to her. And he was like, okay, go in there, So it was very different.
Yeah.
He's more, I'm just going to be honest, he's more of a ham. So he probably doesn't mind where I'm kind of like, oh, I'm in front of all these mirrors. He probably soaked it up a little bit more.
Well, and so that was Dr. Bill Whalen out of Charlottesville, who used to be with the Mary Ainsworth Attachment Clinic, who's really an excellent clinician.
Yes.
And he talks about the purposely alienating the child from the parents and putting them with a stranger to see how they respond in that regard, because they're really looking to you as the parents to soothe them, to be there for them.
Yep. So it's your reaction while you're there, her reaction when you leave, and then how she reacts when you come back.
Yeah. And so I think he did that when she was around maybe 8 months or so.
She was about
6 months?
6 to 8 months.
Okay.
And then again when she was over a year.
All right. And then clearly he found that the attachment the second time around over a year was much stronger.
Correct.
At that point. Yeah. And so the older the child gets and the more attached, the more time they've been with you, of course, the greater the detriment to move them.
That bond grows.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the problem with a lot of the kids in foster care is that have reactive attachment disorder because, they've been moved too many times. That bond's been broken. Right. And then that's where you get so much dysfunction and so much distrust and sense of abandonment by the child.
Yes, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard for them.
So that really was a pivotal part as well in both the juvenile court proceeding and the circuit court proceeding. So let's talk a little bit about how the circuit court proceeding was a little bit different than the juvenile court proceeding, because now we're in open court, right?
Yes, it was more what you would see on TV looking court. The judge, there's the room for the jury, and then you have the people that can witness it. And it lasted 2 days, which was a shocker because we thought we'd get it in 1 day, and we were actually in court for 19 hours.
Yeah. Long time. And then at that level, though, you were able to have folks from your church and friends, et cetera, be able to sit in on the proceedings.
Come and watch.
Yeah.
Yes.
And support.
And how was your church a factor in that proceeding?
They were there. Our pastor was there. In fact, 2 of our parishioners testified on our behalf. Our pastor testified as well. They were character references for us. So they were, throughout the entire process, they were so incredibly supportive. They helped ease some of those fears because you had that loving support constantly wherever we went, whether it was our family, our friends, and then, of course, our church supporting us.
Yeah. So we are about to head to the break. This is attorney Colleen Quinn, and today we're talking about surviving a contested adoption with Dustin and Tiffany Griffith. If you have any calls you want to make into the show, call it 804-454-1366 on any family law litigation questions, because Dustin and Tiffany have definitely been through it.
You've been listening to Raising the Bar, Greater Richmond's premier law talk radio show. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
With SRN News, I'm Rich Thomason in Washington. Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan will not run for re-election. That, according to some people close to the Wisconsin lawmaker. His plans have been the source of considerable speculation of late. Ryan had made tax cuts centerpiece of his legislative agenda. Congress did deliver on that late last year. Ryan plans to speak with reporters in a little while. Offering a preview of military action against Syria, President Trump is warning Russia that missiles will be coming. The president still up in arms over the chemical weapons attack on Syrian civilians, blaming Russia as well as the regime of Syrian President Bashar Assad. Later this morning, CEO Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook will be taking the witness chair on Capitol Hill for a second day of congressional testimony. This is SRN News.
Dennis Prager here again, happily telling you about Relief Factor and my wife's knee pain that is gone because of Relief Factor. I'm taking it, and it lowers my pain as well. A lot of people have muscle or joint pain. Our housekeeper's husband couldn't work any longer because of back pain, so we gave him Relief Factor, and now he's back to work. Can I guarantee it will work for you? Of course not. But the majority of people who tried the 3-week quick start for just $19.95 go on to order more. Give it a try at relieffactor.com.
Protecting data across modern decentralized networks presents challenges that traditional backup solutions can't handle. At best, you'll waste time and money managing multiple solutions. At worst, gaps in coverage will leave your data vulnerable. Barracuda Backup is a single cloud-integrated solution that simplifies the backup process and allows data replication to anywhere on your network, a private cloud, Barracuda's cloud, or to the AWS public cloud. Reclaim your data. Try Barracuda Backup free at barracuda.com/.
John Fredericks.
And Stormy Daniels. She took the money. Number one, he denied it, and Stormy Daniels denied it. Check. Secondly, we know he didn't elect the Pope president. Check. Third, she took the 130 and spent the cash. You know what? Gold digger.
Don't miss the gold rush of truth and common sense. The John Fredericks Show.
I mean, I think it's embarrassing for the network.
Weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. on WNTW, AM 820 and 97.7 FM.
If it happens to be true, who cares?
Take a moment and rate your lifestyle on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is a life that's nothing like the life you were promised after getting good grades, a college degree, and a good job in corporate America. 10 is the life of your dreams. If you answered anything less than a 10, tune into the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del, self-made millionaire and founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, will show you how to live the life of your dreams and pay for it with passive income.
Tune in to the Del Walmsley Show weekdays from noon to 1 right here on WNTW 820 The Answer. Now back to Raising the Bar. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
We are back. This is attorney Colleen Quinn with the law firm of Block and Quinn. And today I am interviewing Tiffany and Dustin Griffith about surviving a contested adoption, which they did for over 2 years and 3 months. And Tiffany can probably say to the hour and the minute.
Yes.
And we were, before the break, we were talking about going through the juvenile court trial, which was then appealed for a brand new circuit court trial. And one of the things we were talking about was how much shorter and contained the juvenile court trial was, because we really only had about half a day, even though the judge stayed late.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And that was in a closed courtroom. But then the circuit court case went for 2 days, and that was in an open courtroom. So there's a very big difference between those two trials.
Yes.
Yeah. And we do have a caller on the line. Katie, are you there?
Hello?
Yes. Good morning, Katie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. So I was just wondering, you talked a little bit before the break about the Griffiths talked about their, relationship with the birth mom and how that was, kind of strained, and it didn't ending up with the post-adoption continued contact. But I was wondering what their relationship with the birth dad was like throughout this process and what it is now.
Yeah, great question.
So at first and I think even he didn't know where that relationship would end or even how it would start. And so as things progressed, we got to know each other. We talked quite frequently while we were in litigation, and then we remained in contact with him. He actually joined our church.
Oh,
so
wow.
We see him on Sundays. And then every once in a while, I send him a picture. He's a pretty laid back guy, so he doesn't request anything, but we're friends on Facebook. I've had our adopted daughter's biological siblings over to spend the night. So there's a sense of family that we have with Jason and the boys.
And you actually help babysit the boys.
I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I have. I've helped babysit them. They're now 10, 5, and 4.
Wow. And I know at some point, it was going to be revealed to the boys that Aviana was their sister. So has that happened yet, or is it still in process?
The younger two don't really know or ask. The 10-year-old, I actually met Jason at a ice cream shop, and we bought the young man ice cream and sat down and talked to him and said, do you remember before your mommy went to prison? Do you remember her being pregnant? And he was actually ecstatic. We were unsure how he would process that. And he was just, he took like ownership of her and wants to protect her. And when he sees her, he's like, she's so cute. I love her so much. And so it's a blessing to have all of them in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So Katie, does that answer your question?
Yeah. That's really wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much for calling into the show. So, and I assume at some point the other boys when it's appropriate, will know. Yeah.
Exactly. It's kind of hard to explain that to a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Right. Just the concepts of sex and how that works.
Exactly.
It gets a little more involved.
So, but the oldest knows, and he comes up to her in church and gives her a hug and a kiss, and he'll ask about her, and sometimes she'll even ask where he is, because when we get to church, so.
And there's another older brother out there.
There is. There's by another father. There is a 17-year-old young man who is autistic, and we reached out to his father and said if ever you thought that you wanted that contact, but he didn't feel that it was something that he would handle very well with everything he has going on.
Knowing that there was a young toddler sister out there.
He knows, yeah. I believe that the young man is aware of her, but the meeting probably is not in his best interest.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Lots of different factors and dynamics
yes.
to think about.
Yes.
But when you think about it, just more people to love the child. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the Indian Child Welfare Act. Because you've had a lot of twists and turns in your case. And we refer to the Indian Child Welfare Act as ICWA, ICWA, and you probably had no clue what ICWA was. And then lo and behold, I'm letting you know that there's this ICWA issue. So what was that all about?
Shocking, because there had never been any disclosure of there being Indian ancestry. In fact, the birth mother had always claimed to be very Irish. The birth father is English, and our daughter is very white. That's the way to put it. You know, she's very pale, blonde hair, blue eyes. So it was kind of infuriating a little bit, because you felt like they just kept throwing things in to see if something would stick.
Right. So basically the birth mom was trying to claim that she had Cherokee heritage, and then the Indian Child Welfare Act requires you, the new regulations under it require you to look into whether or not she or the child can be deemed an Indian child. So either she's a tribal member or eligible for tribal membership, or the child is eligible for tribal membership. And basically, normally she would have to be a tribal member, but there's some tribes out there that can automatically make you a member even if you don't apply to them. So suddenly we've got this assertion that, oh, I'm Cherokee, you know?
Yeah, it came up the day of court. That was one of her attorney's opening contest. However, she was contesting it, that she wanted the trial to be delayed so that they could pursue this ICWA issue. And Judge Sella had said, you know, he thought the exact same thing, that this was just a kind of a gimmick to prolong this, and that he wanted this child to finally be able to have roots and claim where she was going to have permanency.
Right. So after that trial in circuit court, in an attempt to preempt anything, we contacted the 3 federally recognized Cherokee tribes to see, are these folks on the rolls? Are they eligible, et cetera? And the answer from all 3 federally recognized tribes, of course, was no.
Right. And, and the day of court, my dad came up to me. He's, we have Indian in us. It's like, well, it really doesn't work that way. But we had to still go through the lengths of proving that it was not the case.
Right. Yes. And then there was a motion to rehear on that issue. So fortunately, we had that information at that time. But I know that that's kind of was a whole wrench thrown into everything when you think the case is going to be about whether the child's attached and, the birth mom's criminal history and, her ability to care for the child and all those things. And then suddenly we've got this ICWA thing thrown in there.
It was just another hurdle to jump.
Yeah.
Just another hurdle.
And another unfortunate thing that your lawyer had to research, which then cost you more money.
It did.
Yes, it did.
And her attorney was pretty good at doing some of that stuff. So there were some unforeseen costs that we didn't even think that would come up.
Right. For a court-appointed attorney, she had an excellent attorney who did a really thorough job.
She did. It kind of changed. I was like, does everybody get a defense like that?
Right. It really depends. Some folks get really good court-appointed attorneys, and others get ones that don't quite put as much effort into it. So what were your family dynamics while you were, with both of your parents, support from family? What was that like when you're going through this?
From the very beginning, we've had an amazing amount of support. I actually had to go back to work 2 days a week, and my mom watches her one day. Dustin's mom watches her the other day. But if I wasn't emailing you to say, oh my gosh, should I worry about this? I was on the phone with my mom or my dad, and Dustin would be on the phone with his mom, and just getting that support that it's going to be okay. Everything, they were there 24/7 for us. You go through a lot of stress. It's hard. You're constantly worrying, is she going to be taken? What will her life be like? What will happen? I would hold her and think, if she's taken, she's going to cry for mommy and mommy's not going to be there. I worried more about how that would affect her than how I would deal with it. So they were there to support us.
There's always this fear that the adoption might not go through.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. There was a fear that once the birth mom got out of prison, that she somehow might be able to get her back.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there was a fear that you might not be able to even keep custody of her.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So Dustin, what was that like going through that process?
It was very, very stressful. Majority of the day I'm out working, so it takes my mind off everything. But then coming home and seeing my wife, who's been sitting there with her all day and worrying and everything about it, I mean, it's very, very stressful. And it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah. And the financial stress was tough too.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But God made everything happen. He looked out for us, and when I needed a job, I ended up getting a job, and everything ended up working out.
Which is great. So basically, your case went all the way up to the Court of Appeals.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk a little bit now about, so we've been through the juvenile court, and then we have a brand new trial in the circuit court. We have all these motions. We have motions for continuance. We had motions for rehearing, reconsideration. And then finally, and now it's getting appealed up to the Court of Appeals. Let's talk about what that process was like.
I think that I was shocked that she was continuing to pursue it at this level because
the birth mother,
she
and her attorney,
yeah,
and
her attorney,
she had the free court-appointed attorney, yeah.
She called the house twice. And in those 2 times, she never asked about her. So we never had that contact of her wanting to know what was going on, her milestones, or anything about the baby. So it was hard for us to process, why is she still doing this? And then the fear of, well, how do we keep affording this? What will we do?
Because at that point, the birth mom had gotten out of prison.
She did.
Yeah.
She got out of prison. But again, she didn't even show up the day of court. It was just her attorney. And then again, to go to our support, my parents were there. The biological father was there in support of it. And the new GAL at that time was, because it had gone on so long, we had got assigned a new GAL. Right. She was there. I think the hardest part about the appeals is that they don't render a decision right away. So you have to wait and you're at their mercy. I even called the courts and was like, can you kind of just give me a guesstimate? They're like, nope, you get it when you get it. So that was hard, just waiting and waiting. When am I going to hear something? Checking my email, waiting for the phone call. Yeah. It was hard.
So basically, as you'll recall, the birth mom's attorney files a brief with the court,
mm-hmm.
And then we file a response brief, and then the birth father joined in with the response brief, and so I sent that to you to kind of eyeball and
Yes.
everything before we filed it. How did that feel, kind of getting this brief that summed up a lot of what had gone on over the almost 2 years at that point?
At that point, you kind of live and breathe it, and it's just a checklist. Yep, that happened. Yep. The most difficult part was the opposing attorney and the stuff that she put in there that was somewhat fabricated. So I actually took hers and line by line then sent you a response saying, please make sure, which you catch everything anyway. But
it was always good having a client back you up and make sure you didn't miss anything.
Yeah, so I was always doing that.
Which is great. You're the best type of client to have, just making sure, did you get that point? Did you get that point?
Yeah. So I went through and did that, and Dustin read it, and I said, did I catch everything? And then we emailed it to you.
Well, you're the most invested, and when I went through 2.5 years of custody litigation, you're living and breathing it,
you are.
so you're
Every
the most
day.
invested. Yeah. In terms of making sure that every point is that every point that's made there, that the counterpoint is made.
Yeah. A child's life is in balance.
Yeah.
And, you form this bond, and she's your daughter.
Right.
And so just the thought of her leaving was hard. That was the hardest part. And then deflecting so that while you have all this emotional turmoil going on, that she doesn't feel any of that, because you want her to be happy and healthy. So there was a lot of pulling back and not letting her know how stressed we really were.
That's really difficult to not let the child feel the stress that you're going through.
Yeah.
And not let her see that, not
Right.
let her see it on your face and how you act and everything. Just make her happy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's really similar to a lot of folks going through any custody litigation is just trying to keep that from the child so that they're protected, they stay intact. Yeah.
Mhm.
So at the Court of Appeals level, there then was oral argument before the 3-panel judges that you went and attended. What was that
Mhm.
experience like?
I think my biggest shocker was that it was hard. You didn't have one judge, so you had to try to read each 3 judges and see which one's making an expression, and then you're timed. So, you're almost like on a stopwatch, and but you were, Colleen, you were brilliant. You knew everything that day. You knew the law. You helped.
I knew your case
with it.
inside and out.
So you were able to get everything across, and then even have some time to spare. And when we were leaving, our GAL at that time came up and gave me a hug, and she said, you got this. She was like, Colleen was worth every penny. And it worked out that way.
That was really strange when the judges didn't have any more questions for me. And there were other things I could keep talking about, but there's one rule that you learn, and that is, unless there's something that you really have to say, don't keep talking, because sometimes you can talk yourself into a hole.
Yeah.
And usually when they stop asking you the questions, that's a good sign,
Mhm.
So
Yes.
you're no longer getting drilled. You pretty much responded to all the issues. And so there's a point where you have to shut up and sit down.
Yes. And then the other attorney came back because she had the chance to
respond.
speak again.
Right.
And they had more questions for her.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's always a good sign when they're pummeling the other side with questions and they don't have as many
Anything
for you.
us. Yes.
Right. So then you had to wait for the Court of Appeals to issue its decision.
It was about 45 days.
Yeah, that's a long time to be waiting for a decision. And so tell us about the experience when you finally got the court's ruling.
The birth father called me and said that his attorney had just told him, and I'm like, no way, no, what? I haven't heard anything, and I'm just freaking out. And so then I pull up my email, and your assistant had emailed us, and then she called me, and I'm literally jumping up and down and screaming and going, it's over, we won. The cable guy's there, he's looking at me like I'm crazy. And our daughter's looking up at us like, what is going on? I called him, I called my mom, and then it's surreal. It's almost as surreal as the day that we got her, it's done.
Right.
And then
when we found out it wasn't going to get appealed again.
So then there was the 30 more days that we
Right.
had to wait. So then on January 26th, we were like, it's done. The finality of that, you learn to live a new normal, because you live for all this time during litigation with all of that stress, the fear, the worry, the financial burden, and then to learn to live like, just
normal again.
Just this past weekend we were talking about
not afraid of her being taken.
Yeah.
Not having another attorney bill to pay.
I mean, it's a big weight off of your shoulders.
He kept saying it's not over until I get the final bill. So I told him, I said, look, we got a zero balance from Colleen.
That's right. So basically you finally got to that point of this sigh of relief. And you've got this new normal that has kicked in. So tell us in terms of Aviana and your relationship with her. Do you feel like it was easier for her not to keep your stress? You lost your stress now, so you no longer had that. So do you feel like the relationship you were able to have with her is now a much easier relationship?
I don't think I ever struggled with the relationship with her. I think that internally it's easier for me because I'm not trying to have any of that transfer of emotion.
Gotcha.
And then there's always like a time period of reality check. I don't have to worry. You can wake up. You don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about checking my email. Did something new come in from the opposing attorney that we have to now fight? And then, the stress that goes away, because anytime you have stress in a relationship, any part of your life, it stresses every other part of your life. So then, us not having the stress between each other, Dustin and I, and
what does it feel like with knowing that if anybody Googles your name, the first thing that comes up is the Court of Appeals opinion? It's like a 30-page opinion, so it's got all of this private information about you and your story.
I knew about it. So when you sent some preliminary questions, we might talk about this, we might talk about that on the radio show. He was reading through them, and I'm in the living room with Aviana, and I hear him go, "What? That's what happens when you Google our name?" I started laughing. I was like, "Yep, that's what happens." So it's pretty much the first thing that pops up. So I think that because it went in our favor, it doesn't bother me. If it had been the other way around, it probably would have been hard to know that that's there as soon as we're searched.
Right. Well, and that Court of Appeals opinion now is one of the key opinions out there on a contested placement with an incarcerated birth parent.
Yeah. New case law, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. You basically plowed a new path,
Yes.
So because there wasn't much case law out there, we tried to gather everything we could on cases with contesting incarcerated birth parents. But a lot of those cases were with birth parents that were incarcerated for a pretty long period of time. And here, the birth mom in this case, she was scheduled to get out of prison just 2 months after the circuit court trial.
Correct.
So that was a big factor that Judge Sella had to consider, was the fact that she was about to get out. But he also had the benefit of having overheard and overseen some of her criminal proceedings.
Yeah, a lot of her felony charges were in Powhatan County.
And one of the things that came up there was that, past behavior oftentimes is a good predictor of future behavior.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because what has happened with the birth mom since she's gotten out?
She seemed to do well for a short stint of time. She remarried very quickly within 5-6 months of being released. And then immediately things started to crash. Addiction came into her life again. She's been arrested for several assault charges, a DUI, a failure to appear. So there's been a lot of turmoil. I know she's been in Tuckers and things like that. So, and then she's almost completely lost visitation of her other children.
Wow.
So she's suffered a lot, I would say.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because you would hope that, that incarceration period, and I know that she worked really hard to rehabilitate herself, but issues with addiction in particular are pretty hard to kick.
She, she went back to her old house. Her mother had passed away while she was in incarceration and left her the home that was their family home. And I think that some of those patterns just fell into place for her.
And that's a good observation, Tiffany, because I had a case where I represented a birth father who was incarcerated on drug charges, and he got out. And the first thing he did was he moved from the Richmond area to another part of Virginia,
Yes.
and
Yes.
he got a whole new set of friends and supporters. And he has been out. He actually got custody of his son back.
Wow.
Yeah, but not going back to that same environment. Getting out, he did turn to church as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there were a lot of different factors that went into being successfully rehabilitated.
Well, a lot of times they say that you have to change your patterns. You have to change where you were, your friends. So she went back into a lot of things that were stressful to her and similar patterns. And the things that stressed her, she invited back into her life. And ultimately, she's no longer in that home. She's living with her aunt. And I'm not sure where the assault charges are going to go, but it hasn't been a good road for her.
Do you have any contact with her?
She has called the house a couple times. And I believe, I can't say for certain, but it did seem that she was inebriated in some sort during those conversations. I know what it's like to have a lot of loss because, Dustin and I, we lost several children. I actually had a prayer blanket made for her that had several verses on there. Some that she had sent me in a letter once, and some that I have on a prayer blanket for Aviana, and I took it to her house and gave it to her. And it's hard. I think it's just hard seeing how broken she is and her life is.
And how do you plan to explain this? How are you explaining it? A lot of folks will do a my birth story or my adoption story. And knowing the two of you, I know that you're going to put things in a very positive light, but how is this all going to be explained to Aviana?
So I tell her all the time at bedtime. And in fact, the night before I tell her, you were a gift from God. And I said, the day you came home, you were the greatest gift to mommy and daddy. I don't want to cry. And she looked at me and she said, oh my gosh. And so we're kind of planting that seed to be able to tell her that, I don't want her, if she gets old enough, so there's age appropriate disclosure, I don't want her to know things until she gets old enough if she asks me about her birth mother. Right. So we'll probably go along with you did have a tummy mommy, and you had another daddy that really wanted you to have the best life you can have and be with us. And we do. We look at her every day as a gift from God. Her middle name is Grace because it's by God's grace that we have her.
Oh.
So.
And how does she know Jason? Does she know him as like Uncle Jason? Or?
She just says Jason. Yep, okay. And he's cool with that. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then at some point, slowly but surely, just as Jason's boys have had to learn, well, the oldest one knows. Yes. Eventually, they'll all get it figured out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's up to her how much she wants to interact.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, but again, it's just more people to love
her.
The child.
Absolutely.
So, well, we have had a fascinating show today with Dustin and Tiffany Griffith. And if you Google their name, you will find the Court of Appeals opinion, which is some 30 pages, I think.
30
it's
some
pretty
pages.
long.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can read about the whole process. But thank you so much for joining me on the show today and sharing what has been a pretty emotional, long journey.
Definitely.
Well,
Thank you for having us.